Hey guys, this is Mr. Cole. This is an optional lecture, so it's not for homework, but can be used to review for your test or for any extra help that you need. So today we're going to talk about three different presidential plans with imperialism: big stick policy, dollar diplomacy, and missionary diplomacy. So here we go. Big stick. What the big stick diplomacy is Teddy Roosevelt's plan for dealing with foreign nations. It comes from a quote that he said where "speak softly and carry a big stick." Now, what this means is that the U.S. will go to negotiate and go and work for peace, but will always use the threat of military action to intimidate other nations, to hopefully get other nations to do what we want based on the power and threat of our military. This is built off the Roosevelt Corollary, which is an addition to the Monroe Doctrine, which told European nations to stay out of the Western Hemisphere. But what the Roosevelt Corollary says is that the United States is going to be willing to use its force to protect its interests in Latin America. So the United States will always go to try and work and protect its business interests, its military interests, its political interests in these foreign countries like Mexico and Nicaragua and Honduras, areas that are considered Latin America. Essentially what we start doing is playing the police in the Western Hemisphere, and we're going to start getting significantly more involved in the affairs of other countries. For example, if there's say a war between two Latin American countries, we're going to jump in because it affects our interests. One of Roosevelt's kind of defining achievements, but also a prime example of imperialism, is the Panama Canal. Teddy Roosevelt thought that the U.S. needed a canal to go through Central America. You'll see a picture here of why people wanted a canal. To get from the east side of the United States to the west coast by ship, you would have to go all the way around South America. Whereas now, if you build a canal through Central America, you can shortcut it and make the trip a lot shorter, a lot more efficient. Here's the problem, though. The U.S. has to get permission from Colombia, who ruled the area that's now considered Panama. And Colombia doesn't want to give up the land to the United States to do this. So what the United States does is supports a rebellion of a Panamanian rebellion in exchange for the canal rights. So the U.S. economically and supplies and organizationally helps support the people from Panama to rebel against Colombia. And once Panama wins, they give us the rights to the canal. In fact, as the treaty was being signed, there was a U.S. naval ship right outside of Panama already, because it was been there to be supporting the rebellion and the revolution. So here you see a picture of the Panama Canal. This is a set of locks in the Panama Canal to raise and lower the water of the ships. All right, Taft. William Howard Taft follows Teddy Roosevelt, and he does a type of plan called dollar diplomacy. And instead of focusing as much on using the military to intimidate other nations, Taft decides to use money to control other nations. And what dollar diplomacy is it encourages U.S. businesses to loan money to Latin American countries. So why the heck would you do this? Well, these countries were loaning all sorts of money to Latin American countries, knowing that they're not going to be able to pay it back. Well, when they're not able to pay it back, now we have control over them. That we can get them to do what we want because they owe us money. So we're extending economic control over countries, and it's just another way of controlling a foreign nation. Skipping this stuff. This is stuff we did in class. Woodrow Wilson. All right, Woodrow Wilson follows Taft and adds one more big giant plan to our imperialist playbook, and that's missionary diplomacy. And what he means by missionary diplomacy is a type of moral diplomacy. That the U.S. had the duty to not recognize governments that were I missed out there, that were bad or undemocratic. So we encouraged democratic governments. It's based off of our morals and what our country is like, and trying to not support leaders who were bad for the country. Now, do we really do this? Yeah, not necessarily, but it was Wilson's way of trying to extend democracy to other nations. Now, this comes forth in Mexico, where the leader of Mexico, who was supported by the U.S., was overthrown, and Wilson actually sends in troops to help and put a new leader in who's not as violent, and then also hunt down any revolutionaries still in the country. So one of the famous revolutionaries he hunts down is Pancho Villa, who was an outlaw and was the U.S. Army couldn't find him for years, trying to hunt Pancho Villa down. But that's Wilson's missionary diplomacy. All right, and then lastly, what are we done with China? We've talked about in class how the United States has gotten the Philippines because we want a trading capital to trade with China. And so we know that China is very, very important for trade. Well, at this time, China had already been basically colonized by other European nations. Now, instead of having true colonies, what they called these was spheres of influence, and the different European countries within those areas had trading rights and had some control over the government that was there, and basically China was split up into all these different areas. So the United States is like, wait a minute, we're late to the game in China. We can't trade in the orange areas because that's Britain. We can't trade in the yellow areas because that's France. We can't trade in the purple areas because that's Japan. So we have this sweet Philippines, but now we're not going to be able to trade with anybody. And so what happens is the United States offers what's called the open door policy. The Secretary of State at the time, John Hay, gives a series of letters called the open door notes. And what the open door policy is, it was an agreement between all the nations in Europe that each European country would open up their area of trade to other countries. All right, so we're basically opening China up to trading by every single country, not just in the spheres of influence. Now, especially we're opening up trade to Americans because Americans do not have a sphere of influence. So now the Americans are going to be able to ship their products to Britain's areas in there, and France's spheres of influence, and Russia's spheres of influence, as well as the area of the Chinese government. No one country is going to dominate trade. We're going to open it up for everybody. All right, that was the three presidents and plans, different types of diplomacy, different policies that get made. So thanks for listening, and hope you have a good day.